Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Scrum Down NBC Sports Rugby Podcast. I am your host with the most, Alex Corbs, and it is great to be back, everyone. Happy holidays. Apologies to anyone that was waiting for their Scrum Down last week. We had our Christmas break last week. We are now back. No more breaks until the run into the season, so no more disappointment for anyone that was upset. But lots to talk about on this week's show. We have a big guest. We have Tom Pearson from London Irish to react after their big win over Saracens on Friday night. Before we get to that, I just want to talk through some of the developing stories. You know, our last episode, we had Alex Lowe on. We touched on Steve Borthwick era, that just before the announcement officially that he was on board, before the Twickenham press days and all the stuff there. Eddie Jones has now spoken out as well. And there's just a few things to keep touching on as that evolved. And I wanted to give my say because there's different camps here. You've got your Andy Goods and people like that were adamant that Eddie Jones had to go. And then you've got maybe more like a Haskell camp, which is very much supporting that it was the wrong decision for Eddie to go. Very reactionary decision by the RFU. And I think the truth is somewhere between the middle. As we touched on previous episodes, I think for me personally, Eddie's real downfall was the turnover in staff, lack of consistency. And for me, where his game probably was hurt the most was the set piece was not good enough. In the 4 years leading up to 2019, the set piece was incredible. Steve Borthwick, Neil Hatley. And since then, that supremacy and that consistency has faded. And I think that put Eddie under pressure. And I think that's one of the reasons why potentially, you know, his time ran out, because I think if England had been tidier at the set piece, they probably wouldn't have lost some of the games they lost, or it wouldn't have affected them as much. But on a whole, I do agree with some of the arguments that the RFU made a reactionary decision. You know, hearing Alex Payne, Haskell Tins talk about it, talking up to potentially £4 million to make this coaching setup change. You know, Steve Borthwick was going to join the England squad in the summer for the run-in. Eddie Jones has a very good win record at World Cups. He got them to the final last time, even after poor times. But I think the big issue here is it's just sort of mixed messaging. The RFU backed Eddie, said World Cup, World Cup, World Cup. And then finally the fans boo at Twickenham. And that seems to be the sort of nail in the coffin. That and the media getting on the wrong side. And it was too deep a hole for sort of Eddie to come back from. And, you know, I think it could have gone either way. Like I said on previous pods, I think if Eddie had stayed in the job, I think England probably would have done pretty well at the World Cup. I do think he would have done well there. But I also think there were so many cracks and warning signs of things that weren't improving or needed to get better. And Eddie wasn't in a position where I thought he was going to make massive changes to his coaching staff running into the Six Nations. Now we're going to see a bit of a hybrid coaching staff. It looks like Steve Borthwick, Kevin Sinfield, but then probably sitting over some of Eddie's original staff, with then a lot of turnover coming over in the summer. Is that good or bad for England? That's a lot of things that you can weigh up and make decisions on. It's hard to really give a definitive answer either way, but to me, I think I completely understand why Eddie went. I do think if he were going to make a decision, it should have been earlier. It should have been when cracks were earlier, instead of giving him the runway to 2023 World Cup, saying it's all about the World Cup, then turning a U-turn, not mentioning really the World Cup in any of the Borthwick announcements, just restoring pride, restoring sort of passion in the jersey, England back to where they need to be, seemed to be a lot of the key messaging. And for me, you know, I think that's just the RFU not wanting to admit that maybe they did go too far with Eddie Jones before they panicked, and maybe they should have made the decision earlier, or maybe they should have just backed it all the way. And I think the big thing is a lot of the players, I haven't seen many, if any, players really coming out speaking too negative of Eddie. There's a few, guys who've already been out of that setup that have said things maybe not as favourable to him, but from media reportings, there was always like unhappy players in camp, a lot of things like that. And I think the fallout will still happen. We'll probably learn more over the next couple of weeks, but I don't think that was really as much a bigger driver as potentially was thought at the time. In media reporting, it seems to be more, the fans booing rattled the RFU, and then the results finally, and some of the lack of, performance on the field at times, like that South Africa game was just a dud, and I think it was the worst way to finish. It's the last taste or picture in people's minds, and then it has a sour sort of note over Christmas into the Six Nations, where England want to be successful in the Six Nations. They also want to make sure they generate a lot of revenue at Twickenham, want the fans to be excited about coming back, and potentially that change is linked to that as well. But Steve Borthwick is a world-class coach. He's had 9 years working under Eddie Jones. He's then gone on to be his own head coach and won the Premiership in a short period of time, and made real impactful change at a club that, was not in a good place when he took over. And now he's in an opportunity to try and do that with England. And I think it'll be exciting, really, where he goes with his staff appointments, who he keeps through this interim, but then who he brings in the summer, and how England prepare for the World Cup. Because I do think Steve Borthwick is a long-term solution that could do 2 cycles for England and it'd be very successful, as long as, he doesn't fall into some of the traps that, Eddie and other England coaches had, of getting on the wrong side of the media, of getting those poor runs of games, and not sort of staying in the right mind to allow your long-term plan to continue and be successful. But that's just my 10 cents on Eddie Borthwick, what's going on right now. But it's now time to turn ahead to our main chunk of the episode. We have Tom Pearson on from London Irish. This is a guy who's had a crazy year and a bit of rugby. He came from nowhere playing his rugby at Cardiff Met in university, to straight into London Irish playing first team games, to straight into wider England squads. He just had a massive man of the match performance on the weekend, on Friday night against Saracens. London Irish winning in a thriller of a game. I implore you all to go check it out. In America, it's on demand. Just go on Peacock TV. It's right there. If you're back in the UK or wherever else you watch your rugby, check it out. It was a fantastic game, 2 red cards, so much expansive rugby, knife edge of a game as Saracens came back. And then what a moment where London Irish, were able to seal the game. And, incredibly to see all their academy players, making that game-impacting impact, from, Chunyamunga getting the line-out steal, to Tom Pearson with the break, to the final try. It was a real good day for London Irish. That's why I thought it would be good to have Tom on to talk about London Irish, to talk about what's going on behind the scenes there, the club, the spirit, his own journey. Lots to talk about. Let's get into it. And we are joined by man of the moment, player of the match, Tom Pearson, in London Irish's big win over Saracens on Friday night. Tom, welcome to the Scrum Down.
Thanks, Corbs. No, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, mate. It's a pleasure. I've, been watching your career over this last year and your quick rise. And, I got an early tip from Jonathan Fisher about you that, that there's potentially a diamond in the rough. And I think the year you've had obviously proves that was true. But let's talk a little bit about the result first. And, how big a win was that for London Irish? Much needed win. And against the Sarries team that hadn't lost in the Premiership.
Yeah, massive for us, to be honest. We've had, as you know, we've had a quite tough start to this season, for a lot of results that haven't quite gone our way, decided by 5 or less points. So, to beat a Saracens team who are unbeaten, they're very strong on paper. There's a lot of internationals there. To beat them at home just before Christmas, was a dream come true, really.
And you could see the team just look really up for it. It was niggly at times. You guys weren't backing down at home. And what I love about this London Irish team is there's just so many homegrown players in that side as well at the moment, that you can see it really means something to them. Like, the spirit is definitely there at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Even as that last try, it was almost an all-academy graduate, link up from the start from the line out still, to the finish. So, it shows the strength, that the academy has. And, it was really exciting. Like you said, we were up for it from minute 1. It was a little niggle at times, I was always going to have that with the local derby. So, no, it was great. And to see us get over the line, it's a great feeling.
And then if you look at the club this season, it's not been the ideal season. Started reasonably positively, then had a sort of a dip period, but now starting to find a little bit of form. The sparks are there in attack. You're playing some good rugby. Sort of just touch on London Irish's season a little bit more in detail for me.
One of the first couple of games against Worcester, which was fortunately chalked off. because of their unfortunate kind of finances outside of the pitch. But yeah, played Bath as well, one at home, and then we've had quite a rough patch since then. Quite a few tough away games. So likes of Saints, Sale, Exeter as well. So some tough places to go. I think 6 of the 10 games we've played have all been away against fairly strong opponents. So yeah, it's been tough. Not that also includes the addition to the Champion Cup this year. So that's really exciting for us against the likes of Stormers over the way in Cape Town. We spent a nice week there. And then Montpellier the week before at home, which, it's champions of the top 14. Some that you one of the best teams in the world. So yeah, to go so close against them, lost by just 3 points that night at Brentford, shows what we are capable of, but results haven't been on our side on a number of occasions.
Yeah, well, if you look at that, like London Irish, it hasn't been far off. Even in the losing streak, it wasn't like you were just getting blown away game after game. There's been a lot of close games that unfortunately you've been on the wrong side of, where if you look at the table and you guys had won a few more of those, you're sitting pretty. Right now, you're sitting in 9th. But, stringing a few wins together, you got Gloucester away this weekend, and there's a massive opportunity to jump up the table with how competitive and tight it is this year.
Yeah, like you said, Corbs, there's a lot of teams, within 5 or 6 points of ourselves, from quite a tough start we've had, to still be very much in it at this half-point stage is positive. We've got to look at it positively, and definitely Friday night's has to be a turning point in our season. I think in terms of going forward, we've got to be better in those big moments in the games. Things like defending on our own line, but also attack and keeping possession, keeping ball, especially near their try line, and just being a little bit more clinical with that. I think, for example, say against Exeter, we've had the most amount of entries out of any team in the league that round, but we weren't clinical enough to finish those chances. So we ended up coming away with just one losing bonus point. So if we can just improve and make the most of those big moments in the game, hopefully we can start being on the right side of some results.
But I agree, mate. I think the amount of line breaks you guys create, how nifty and dangerous you are in the wide channels as well, with using the forwards and the width out there. You're causing loads of problems for Sarries out wide in those channels all game. You're bang on at those entries and converting those. And for me, it's probably just withstanding the pressure at set piece against some of the big teams is really the KPIs for me, where I see London Irish, if they tweak the dial more and more there, they all of a sudden go from maybe a top 6, top 8 to on a surge to a top 4 because you score so many tries. Like, you do play good rugby.
Exactly. And even looking back at last season, within probably with 2 or 3 rounds to go, we were still in contention, for a semi-final spot. So, we've got to remember that it's a long old season, and we've got to be on it every week to make sure we can get the most out of every game. It's like you mentioned, the set piece, that's going to be just as important and crucial on New Year's Eve against Gloucester. We know what they bring all the time. They've scored more driving mauls than any other team in the league. So, that's going to be a big focus for the week and something we've really got to get right, New Year's Eve.
I imagine, Skivington's Maul, it doesn't mess around, mate. It's simple but effective at times. And I think for you as well, probably be a good game. I'm assuming your family will be able to come watch. A lot closer to home for them to be able to come watch you.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I actually went to school in Cheltenham for a number of years, so I'll probably stay around, and have a few celebrations there on that night. But yeah, good game for the family to come to as well.
Awesome. And then lastly, on London Irish, sort of big picture, talk a little bit about the ambitions of the club. Obviously, maybe not sitting exactly where you want in the league, but there is a lot of positive coming. There's a lot of momentum moving. Like, you've committed your long-term future to the club. There's a lot of homegrown players that are doing that, which is a good sign. Just a little bit about the long-term ambitions of the club and how you feel about it all.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for me on a personal level, anywhere that I'm kind of enjoying playing rugby, it's a no-brainer for me really to commit long term. I know I share that feeling with a number of other boys, like sort of Will Joseph and Henry Arundel have also committed. for a similar length of time. So yeah, no, it's really important, like you said, that we can keep those guys on board. And you know, it's a great catchment area. It's a great academy. We've shown that. So keeping hold of those guys and keeping them fit, you know, it's so important for us to succeed as a club. And in terms of ambitions, like you said, it's been, you know, it's been a number of years, probably since you played at London Irish, since we were last in the Champions Cup. So it's great to be back in that competition. Something that might have been, you know, a reason for players to leave in the past. Not being in that competition to now, you know, we're right in the mix. So you know, it's another reason to really stick around and get involved.
Definitely. And you got Brentford, great stadium, great facilities, and hopefully, you know, building just a good home in West London and building that crowd and that fan base. And Champions Cup is a big draw for that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's Brentford's a great place to play. I don't know if you've been yet, but it's yeah, it's unbelievable. It's loud. It just feels like you know, it's brand new. It feels like the
Yeah.
fans are so close to you. It's you're right on the touchline. You know, it's an awesome place to play. And I know, speaking to other players at other teams, they love coming down and playing as well.
No, definitely. I haven't yet been there, but I look forward to it. At some point, I need to go. Macca, get me some tickets. Uh,
Tackle there.
but no, no, definitely. Let's talk a little bit about now your journey and sort of your career more individually. We've taught London Irish, and mate, it's been a whirlwind sort of year or so for you, if not maybe just slightly more than a year. But you know, you've kind of broken the mold. Didn't come through that traditional just academy from 18 route. You went to university, playing at Cardiff Met, and all of a sudden London Irish sort of find you, pick you up, and you know, within a couple of months, you're going from your first ever first team experiences to being in a wider England squad. You know, let's just talk a little bit about that first. You know, like what was it like university rugby, and then getting the call from London Irish?
Yes, it was a great experience at uni. Poignantly, I was actually at Gloucester, kind of in their junior academy at around 18, where I was released from. And I knew deep down that I probably wasn't ready for professional rugby at that point, if I was honest with myself. So going to uni, going to Cardiff Met was a great option. Playing so much rugby, a number of leagues as a men's team in the Welsh Championship. We play on a Saturday, you know, as well as a high performing Bucks team on a Wednesday. Who, you know, this year they're on a really good season. I think they might be second at the moment. Second at the moment in the league in the Bucks. So yeah, no, it's a great place to play. Lots of rugby, and somewhere I developed physically as well. I probably put on a solid, you know, 5 6 kilos over my 2.5 years, which was cut short by COVID, which is a shame. In my third year, so I didn't really get to finish off properly. But I think developing physically was so important for me. There's a really good and ambitious program in terms of S&C, and turning these guys coming in from school to, you know, to pro athletes at 21. So that was huge for me and into getting me here. And then yeah, you know, when the call came from London Irish, I think I remember it was a FaceTime with Deck Kidney, Les Kiss, and I believe Fish was on there as well. So, you know, differentiating between the accents was a bit of a challenge, but we got there in the end. And you know, yeah, no, so happy I've signed, and yes, it's been a great year and a half. You know, the couple of England camps I've been involved in, great learning experiences. There's a lot of really good players, a lot of experience there still, that I've been able to learn from. Uh, you know, some real competitors there, and some strong players in my position. So, you know, trying to bang down that door for an international cap has been tough. You know, there's a lot of competition, and yeah, I've just got to kind of try and stay committed, stay motivated to you know, try and get a place.
And no, I remember John Fisher, or Fish as we're calling him, or Jonathan Fisher. You know, I've known him; he's one of my best friends my whole life. But I do remember him talking about you way before you'd even turned up at London Irish or played for the first team, really. And it's amazing what you've done in this short period of time. And if you look at it from turning up, you know, and not really knowing what to expect of professional rugby, how has your mentality sort of grown or changed from that early sort of arrival to where you are now as a bit more seasoned and in the position you're in?
Yeah, coming onto professional rugby, it was tough at the start. It's as an academy kid, there's a lot of training there. Potentially, doing your training, doing your gym at kind of pretty inconvenient times, but it's all part of the daily grind, and knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and everything you're doing now will massively help you in the future. So to keep going on that was crucial for me in those early times, and something I try and reiterate to some of the younger guys now, that the time will come and the opportunities will come. It's about making sure that you're in the best possible place once you've done the work to take that opportunity. So yeah, it's I tried to just keep it pretty simple in terms of playing. Just trying to remember that it's the same game I've been playing for years. Albeit at a different level, but just it's still two rugby posts and a green grass pitch at the end of the day. So yeah, if you just boil it down to that, it's can be fairly simple.
No, mate, completely agree. And I think just going back to sort of that early initiation into Prem rugby, had a couple games, had like solid performances, but maybe a little quiet compared to the performances you're putting in now. And then all of a sudden you get to Exeter away, where you get a man of the match performance. What was that like to kind of announce yourself, prove yourself at such an early point in your career?
Yeah, no, it was massive actually. I remember I played a game on the Monday at Hazelwood, actually, with Saracens, kind of an A-League game. And I'd done okay, actually. I thought I'd had a decent game considering it was my first one in a while, over, after lockdown, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I got the call. I remember the team going up against Exeter and I was down to start. So, yeah, I was a little bit shocked, a little bit hesitant to start with, but I knew that it was kind of an opportunity that needed to be taken. Spoke to Fish the night before. I remember him telling me that I didn't have much of an option other than to really back myself and go for it. So, I really went for that. And yeah, it was good to announce myself, at such a pivotal win in that season. I think it was a bit of a springboard moment for us going forward, and ended up having some good results in the weeks forthcoming to that game.
And then hugely, what was it like sort of your first initiation into that England environment and seeing that sort of level intensity, getting to experience under Eddie as well, from literally being in uni and no rugby through COVID to where you were then?
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember turning up at Penny Hill. Eddie was I didn't know too much about him. There weren't many players Irish that had been coached by him before, so I was kind of going in a little bit. I didn't have much idea of what to expect. So, likes to play a few games, without knowing your name properly or interacting with you too much. So those are some psychological games early on, but once you get past a little bit of that and you can, really boil it down to the rugby. He's a great coach, very direct. Really lets you know what he thinks you need to work on, which is really helpful for a young player trying to improve. So I was really thankful of that, and it was nice to to get those opportunities in those camps, and it's good, and hopefully be involved in the future.
Have you had any contact from Steve Borthwick or anything with the changes yet, or no? He was at the game on Friday, and he did put in a decent shift. So I was just wondering maybe if you've had any contact.
Nothing yet, I'm afraid. I did hear he was at the game, so but no, I haven't spoken to Steve yet. I know he's got a very good record, with both in the club game, but coaching Japan and England leading up to the 2019 World Cup. So he's a proven coach, but no, we haven't had any kind of correspondence yet.
And then, what are like your goals? Like, what are you looking for? What is sort of, the target that you're aiming for in your day-to-day sort of application of trying to be a better player? Because I hear you're very dedicated. I hear you do, a relentless sort of work on your fundamentals and being on top of sort of the basics, which is very important if you want to get to the top level international rugby. Like, where Where are you aiming, and what are you trying to set yourself out this season for?
Yeah, I think as an individual, like you touched on there, Corbs, I think world class basics is a bit of a cliche term, but I think it's something that's quite often overlooked quite a lot, especially in younger guys. There's those basic skills like there's catch pass and that kind of thing. It helps in so many different areas and gives you so much more time on the ball. It's only going to help the rest of your game. In terms of day to day as well, I think being a player, being a player who's playing quite a lot now for the first team, I think it's important to try and drive the standards and take the team on as well. I'm privileged to be in that position to play quite a lot at the moment. So, to push on and try and take the team with me, that's really important. It's something I try to do every day.
No, I agree. I think you've been one of the most consistent performers for Irish, and for such an infancy of your professional rugby game to back those consistencies up, that's a sign of good fundamentals, good foundations, someone that does the work week in, week out. And so it really is a credit to you. And from all the coaches that I've spoken to, everyone speaks really highly as that's really one of your strengths.
Yeah, it's a little game. I think if you can come to the club and come to Hazelwood every day and just try and be a little bit better than you were the day before, it's going to add up. So, if you can do 0.1% every week, in the grand scheme of things, that really adds up. So it's something just that constant improvement is a big focus for me in the week, and also taking that team forward. So it's nice you've heard that from the coaches. Actually, that's
yeah.
Happy with that.
And then what areas of your game, like where do you think you've made the biggest developments in this last year? Because you burst onto the scene, but I would say you're a far more complete player now than you were a year ago. And I'd just like to get it from yourself. Where have you felt you've made some developments and growth?
I think, like you mentioned previously, that game against Exeter, it was good to come onto the scene and play. But I was quite raw at that point. My tackle technique was really just to dive at people and hope for the best. I came off with, I don't know 20 odd tackles that game, which is quite a lot in 80 minutes. So, but it wasn't that effective. It was kind of just diving at people's feet and not very effective. So trying to be working on my time in the tackle and the physicality that comes with that. Something coaches look for a lot, both at club but internationally, to slow that ball down as a back row is so important. Whether that be in the tackle or then in the breakdown as well. Looking at jackals as well, so defensive breakdown. Anytime I can try and get my hands over the ball for a steal, just really targeting that ball and looking to slow it up, get that ruck speed, slow that down, give us time to set in defence, so then we can come off the line nice and connected, and force them to kick or give us the ball back.
No, definitely. I also feel like some of your work off the ball has been an area where I think you've improved a lot as well. Not to get too noisy, but it's just, that's just one of the areas that I think as you get more reps in the higher levels, what you do off the ball starts to count more and more. And I do think you're growing in that sort of consistently from what I've seen watching London Irish.
Yeah, I think it's something you've always got to be mindful of, that the work you do off the ball will often help you so much more when you are actually on the ball if you're working early to get into those good positions. That's why they nominate yourself to carry or as a support line as well. That's just as crucial. So if we're going out the back or something, to run a good support line to what we call kill defenders, to create space for others outside, it all comes from building early, getting into the shape, and then running the correct lines. So, it's all important to take the team forward.
No, definitely. And a little birdie told me as well that you took on a breath coach as well. Don't get me too excited. I'm a big believer in breath work, but just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this guy called Jacko Davidson, he's works in the north of England. So it's really good stuff. Nothing too crazy, but it's all about using your nasal breaths to slow your resting heart rate, working on your diaphragmatic breathing. We did have a little session as well. Me and James Stokes one day came down to London And we worked on some kind of lactate threshold work on some assault bikes. So, just using complete nasal breaths, sprints, CO2 dumps to, to expel some of that CO2 and then come back to a breath, to a nice controlled breath to lower that heart rate. Something I use before training now, some rib mobilizations, and then, in game, that nasal stuff when I have a break in play, just really, coming back to the present more than anything, and making sure you can go again.
And have you found that it's really helped?
I have. I went into it with quite an open mind, to think if this can help me just 1 or 2%, on a game day or in a training session, it's well worth doing. So yeah, those breaks in play, it just gives you a little bit of time to focus and something to concentrate on, rather than just, frantically panting. You can really slow your breath, and I do find it clears my mind. So I'm really happy I've done that with Jacko.
That's awesome, mate. And then, not obviously I talk him up a lot on this pod, but John Fisher is really proud of the development that you've been putting in at the club and the work you've done. Can you just touch a little bit on the influence he is for you and the other sort of academy forwards coming through, and the sort of assistance and development he gives you guys?
Yeah, we sat down for a coffee at the start of the year. I'm in his IDP group, which is like a group of forwards that he'll look after and kind of coach throughout that year. There will be academy boys plus 1 or 2 senior guys. So we sat down with a coffee at the start of the year, and we kind of set out a plan for pre-season and coming into the start of the season. And one thing I did say is I quite like him to be, fairly, I'd say harsh is the wrong word, but, fairly unforgiving, harsh, it's fairly tough on me in terms of training and when I play, to really let me know when he doesn't think it's quite working, or he sees something to improve, not to hold back, and, really test me at times, which often I think, that will get the best out of me if I have a coach that's pushing me and testing me at those times. So, Fish, he's great, especially at a game review today. He's obviously, found loads of different bits of my game, over the Christmas period. We played on 23rd. So, it puts a lot of work in. And, it's good to repay that by having good performances on the pitch. So, no, I really appreciate it. And I know he works really hard, probably knows my game better than me, which is worrying. So, that's just...
He's obsessed, mate. He's obsessed. This is why me and him are such good friends. We're both obsessives, and we can't let it go. But no, and I only say that as well is because I see a lot of him in you, and similarities in the type of player, the speed, the height, the ball handling, and that's why I think I always think like Fishio 2.0 when I see you play, because I see so much of him in you, even though obviously you're different players, but it's a similar. That's why I think he gets so passionate behind it, because honestly, you guys have so many similar attributes as a player if you'd watched Fish when he was younger.
Yeah, I've heard he's was pretty destructive ball carrier and stuff. I'm not sure I'll be adopting the slick back anytime soon. I know he puts a lot of work into that. So I don't think I got time, but
rush game is strong, mate.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's very proud of it. There's dirty rumour going around. He's put a few highlights in as well, but I don't think can confirm that.
No comment, mate. No comment. Last question of the show. Is there anyone else you want to thank on your journey? People who've supported you, or, people who've made a difference on your way?
Yeah, I've had a lot of support, throughout the years, both from the time, Bromyard Rugby Club, when I was a junior, which was great. And Dad was a coach at the time as well. So, he's really passionate, and he loves coming to watch. My mum, they'll come to most of the home games, and any of the local ones over in the West Country. So, I'm really appreciative of those guys. Also, people at school at Dean Close really pushed me on there, as well as uni and Cardiff Met. So, it's been really supportive time. And then for the guys at London Irish, to give me a chance in the program, they've always had to take a bit of a risk, just from a few highlight videos and, a Zoom call. So, for them to give me this opportunity, I'm very thankful for that.
Awesome, mate. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Good luck this weekend, and come on, you Irish, mate.
That's it. Hopefully we can do it again.
And that is a wrap on this week's Scrum Down. So thankful to Tom for coming on. Lots of good insight there. Little bits of banter as well. Sorry, Fish, if we embarrassed you. But for everyone that's watched, supported this show, I just want to say a big thank you. Keep checking us out. We'll have another good guest next week. Lots to talk about as Premiership Rugby still unfolding as we build towards the Six Nations. Keep an eye on this show. We'll keep coming out with great content. Thanks again for all the support, likes, shares, favorite, retweets, views on NBC Sports YouTube page. We really appreciate those. The pod is growing. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again next week.